Hi, my name is Shriram and welcome to Math Helper. Today, we're going to be factoring more quadratics. So, in a normal quadratic, the format would be ax squared plus bx plus c. And we would see this with something like x squared plus 2x plus 1. Because the a would just be 1, the b would be 2, and the c would be 1. So a, b, and c. But now we are factoring ax squared plus c, and the difference is that there is no bx. So we can cross it out. So we see in all these examples, there's no bx, just ax squared and then a c, right? So this would be the x squared, and this would be the c. So let's look at the first example, x squared minus 1. So we could start this out like a normal quadratic. Put an x down, and then to get -1, you would do -1 times 1. But there's no c, so the way we could prove that is to cross multiply. X times 1 is just x. X times -1 is -x. Oops, -x. And x minus x is 0. So really a way we can write this is just x squared minus or plus 0x minus 1. And obviously anything times 0 is 0, so we don't even need to write that. And that's how we just have x squared minus 1. So when we are factoring this, because of the cross multiplication, we get that. So we could just write it as x minus 1 times x plus 1. And as always, order doesn't matter. You could do x plus 1 times x minus 1. But anyway, this would be the answer if you wanted to just factor it, simplify it. For the next one, we have x squared minus 4. So this is basically the same thing as this. We can do some cross multiplication. X and x get x squared. And to get 4, you just need to do the square root, which is 2. 2 times 2. But there's a negative. So we have to make one of these negative, because -2 times 2 is -4. Cross multiplication, and we see that it would be -2x plus 2x, which is equal to 0. So that means that it works. It's the same thing as this. And we can write this out as x minus 2 times x plus 2. And for this one, you see this 4x? Well, we can do this a couple different ways. So the first way you might just think is just do the square root of 4x squared, which is 2x, and then do another 2x. Square root of 16 is 4, so 4 times 4. Then make one of these negative. And you would get 2x minus 4 times 2x plus 4. And then you would see you can take out 2 from each of these. So it would be 2 times x minus 2. And then you put like another 2 times x plus 2. And then when you want to simplify it further, you can just do 2 times 2, which is 4. And then x minus 2 times x plus 2. But there's actually a much simpler way, which would just be to take out the 4 on both of these numbers. 4x squared divided by 4x squared divided by 4 would just be x squared. And 16 divided by 4 would just be 4. And we can't just put that 4 nowhere, so we have to keep it right there. And then when we are simplifying this, it would be 4 times, and we already did this right here. And the answer for this was x minus 2 times x plus 2. So it would be 4 times x minus 2 times x plus 2. And are these the same answers? Yes, they are. So there we have the same answers. And one thing that I kind of wanted to point out is that you can't do this if you have x squared plus 1. It has to be x squared minus 1. So basically what I'm saying is that it has to be a minus sign. If it's a plus sign, then you won't get any real numbers. Like, any answers would be irrational, or they wouldn't even be on like a number line. So we don't want to worry about that right now. That's a little beyond our what we're going to learn today. So the next one, 25x squared minus 1. You can't really take out anything from this, because 25 and 1 don't really have any factors in common, except for 1, obviously. So we could just do the square root of both of these. The square root of 25x squared would just be 5x, because 5x times 5x is 25x squared. So we'd put those two there, and obviously it would be 1, 1, and put a negative there. And cross multiplication, you'd get negative 5x plus 5x, which equals 0, which is why there is nothing in here. So we can just write this out as 5x plus 1 times 5x minus 1. For this one, we are doing we're doing what we did here again. So you remember I took out 4. You can't really do the square root of 2 unless you want to do like 1.414 dot dot dot, and we don't really want that. We just want whole numbers. So we can just take out 2 from both of these numbers. So if you divide 2 from both of these, you'd get x squared minus 4. And we already know the answer for that, which is x plus 2 times x minus 2. So you can write that out. 2 times x plus 2 times x minus 2. And that would be our answer. And this last one here, you can't really do the square root of 12. And you can't really do the square root of 27 either. At first you might think, oh, there's nothing in common with this, so how can I factor this? But there actually is something in common. If you take out 3, you'd get 4x squared. Let me put a 3 out. Minus 9. And you can factor that. So that'd be 3 times 2x plus 3 times 2x minus 3. And when you are doing these, you might not just, that problem might not just say, oh, factor this, or, yeah, simplify this. It might ask you to solve for x. So how do you solve for x? Well, you do the exact same thing that we did on the last episode. We just had to, when we add a 0 here, that means you can solve for x. And so these would be equal to 0. And then we just need to basically, for each of these, just do x minus 1 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. So x would be equal to either positive 1 or negative 1. Or we can also write that out as plus or minus 1. So I don't really need to go through all of them. Just x would be equal to plus or minus 2. And we basically just need to add we need to see to add a 0 and then move everything to the other side, and we get our answers. And for these, it'll all be plus or minus because it's the same for these, right? It's just that the signs are different. The numbers are the same. So it's obviously going to be, it's all going to be plus or minus. You might be thinking of one thing though, which is, what if you get, say, like 2x squared minus 3, I don't know. Well, actually, that's not a great example. 2x squared minus 6. Now, even when you take out 2, you still get 2 times x squared minus 3. And, well, the thing is, it's kind of hard to, you can't really factor that. So what we're going to do here is basically, we have to take the square root of both of these numbers. So you might think, well, that's out of the blue. How are you getting to that? Well, we're basically doing the same thing for all of these, right? We're doing the square root of 25x squared. We're doing the square root of x squared. So we just need to do the same thing here. So the square root of x squared would just be x. Then we can just do x times x. But the square root of 3, that's a little different. It's a little more difficult. But I don't really think we have to simplify this totally. So just write the square root of 3. And we write that 2 times. But because it's a minus sign, we have to make one of these negative. So the answer would be 2 times x minus root 3 times x plus root 3. And then if we set that equal to 0, and this is all of this equal to 0 in the first place, so the answer would be x equals plus or minus root 3. So that's basically it for the episode. Thank you for watching, and in the next episode, we're going to be learning how to do something called completing the square, which is another way to factor quadratics. So anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you have a nice day, and bye.